Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arash's World. Today we have a special guest, Lisa Campion. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm super happy to be here today.
Wonderful. And so my first question is, how would you briefly describe yourself to our audience here? What would you say about yourself?
I would say that I'm a psychic and an energy healer and a counselor. So I started working as a psychic when I was 19. And I also trained to be a therapist. So for a long time I added um psychic work and therapy sort of mashed together. And then just over 25 years ago, I also learned Reiki and added that into my mix. These days, I mostly write books and teach and train people. I mentor people. So I work with emerging psychics, healers, and empaths to help them fully understand their gifts because so they can go out in the world and use their gifts because I really believe the world needs all the healers it can get right now, Arash. Like we need
Absolutely.
training
Yes.
healers up. My mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the planet.
Yes, please.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing.
So two of your books that I have here is Awakening Your Psychic Ability. I want to talk about that, and The Art
Yep.
of Psychic Reiki, and I want to talk about that as well. But you
Great.
mentioned you started when you were 19 and you realized that you were psychic. How does one find that path of going on the psychic path? How does that work? How did it happen for you? And that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's so different for everybody. But for me, I knew I was psychic right from the beginning. I was like born that way. So I was definitely one of those like I see dead people kids. I
Mhm.
was like, experiencing, I was born in the 60s. So, I was growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And back then it was like not cool. It was not okay to talk about it. It was very weird. It's not like now we have podcasts, we have paranormal TV, there's psychics on TV, we have books, we have back then it was like shh, you have to be quiet, right? So I was spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on, like what was even happening, and then also trying to pretend to be normal in public, which is, was pretty hard for me. And
I've given up on that,
yeah,
pretending
I
to be
know.
normal, right?
I'm still not very good at it.
Um,
So I'm
yeah.
just doing my own thing. But I actually started working as a psychic when I was 19. So I don't know. In some people it's very different. They have like a psychic opening that comes later in life, or I always say like the Reiki, yoga, and meditation are the three gateways that sort of open people's psychic. So you start yoga, you do yoga teacher training, you start meditating, you take some Reiki classes. And if you have some latent psychic ability, that it could really pop your psychic ability open by doing those things.
hmm Would you say it's a gift? Is it something you're born with? Because that's you said at the beginning, or is it something that you can acquire? Is it something that you can work on and train? And can anyone become a psychic? Is actually
Anyone
my
can.
question.
Yeah, it's an ability, like just like musical ability or athletic ability. We all have some. And I think there's a little bit of a myth that, like, you just have what you're born with. But we know if we see professional musicians, professional athletes, they have worked it. They're training, they're studying, they're perfecting their skills. So psychic ability is just like that. If you're willing to put the work in, anyone can open whatever you have. If you're willing to put the work in, you can open it even more.
hmm And so, what about Reiki? What exactly does that entail? What is it? I know it's a holistic approach. It has something to do with energy. What are some
Yeah.
some things that you can tell us here? And I mean, most people are familiar. I'm familiar with yoga and meditation, but what about Reiki? How is that also different from the other practices?
Yeah. So Reiki is a very gentle but powerful hands-on healing modality from Japan.
hmm
It's a little bit like acupuncture without the needles. So
That's
the
cool.
practitioners like learn how to channel this universal life force energy through them. And then we do, we work either with our hands on or off somebody, and it sends a stream of this universal life force energy through the person. It's very good for um, healing pain. It's used in a lot of pain clinics. So it's so interesting. When I started Reiki, it was 1999. It was still pretty fringe, pretty like weird, new age. Like people thought it was strange. Now it's in 800 hospitals throughout the United States. And I live in New England, so here in New England we have some of the best hospitals in the world. All the big hospitals in Boston have full time Reiki people, where so even it's been studied I want to say like even doctors, even doctors understand the value of,
Yeah.
of using it for pain-free, medication-free pain management. It's used pre and post surgery. It's used for depression and anxiety, kind of all the things that we struggle with as humans. It's good for all of that.
And it has no side effects.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
everyone should try it out. It has no side effect. There's
It
no
has
risk.
no side effects. It's
The only,
super relaxing. So people tend to relax. And as we relax, it kicks in our body's natural healing
Mhm.
capacity. We come out of fight or flight and we, open up the rest and digest part of our nervous system. And so our body will not naturally kick into its own healing cycle. But I also think it moves like blocks. People sometimes cry or have a lot of emotional releases. And we know now that that there's a lot of times emotional causation to the, sicknesses, illnesses, pain that we have sometimes is due to like emotions that we're not processing. They get stuck in the body and create problems.
I would say most of the times, but
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
honestly.
And so
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of like stagnant energy that you're kind of opening up for the flow.
Yeah,
And so kind
that's
of like
right.
inflammation too. It's like
Yep.
something's going on and you release it and the energy can flow. So is that the path towards healing and feeling better and having all these positive side effects through it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's used a lot with mental health patients too, because again, it's sort of like medication free. Like if we kind of get energy flowing and we release all the trapped emotions we have in our body and we relax and we have somebody listen to us and, we get that kind of care. I find that, these days, more and more people are turning to Reiki and other holistic healing modalities because we're pretty unhappy with the way the mental health system in our country works. We're pretty, not everybody's satisfied with the medical care they're getting. And the doctor's like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Have another pill. And that's not really working. So more
It's
and
just
more
treating the
people,
symptoms, right?
that's
But it's
right.
not dealing
Or
with the
maybe not
issue.
even that.
Not
Like,
even that in some
y-
cases. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all in your head. You're just, imagining it. And that it just isn't, people are very unsatisfied with that. So they're coming more and more frequently to people like me and other Reiki practitioners who are, and it's not a replacement for Western medicine. We definitely need, you know, allopathic medicine it's great at a lot of things. And there's some things where it's not serving us. And,
Mhm.
Reiki as well as other holistic healing modalities can really step in and fill that gap.
Mhm. And how
Yeah.
can one learn that? How can one become a teacher and so on? Like, is there a manual? Is there like training, individual? Like, how does it work? What's the process there for that?
Yeah. I wrote a really great manual called The Art of Psychic Reiki. But also, you should have a teacher, you need to
Mhm.
study, just like anything else. There's a process called an attunement, which is how, the Reiki teacher sort of changes the student's energy field in a particular way that allows the student to connect with the Reiki energy. And so that's a necessary part of it. But it's relatively easy to learn. We people learn it in a few hours or a couple of weekends. And you can teach it online, which I learned over the pandemic. I had been teaching in person Reiki for a really, really long time. And then, we all had to change the way we were working during the pandemic. And I figured out how I could do it remotely. So that's really exciting. And I have online Reiki classes. And my Reiki is a very unique blend because I add psychic development to it. So psychic Reiki.
Mhm.
And it's this
Yeah.
blend of intuition, how we use our intuition um to as we're studying Reiki, if we can tap our intuition and our psychic ability, it gives us a really beautiful adds to our toolkit of how we can help our clients.
And I'm thinking of it's a kind of massage to the soul. Would that be
Oh
close
my
to
God. I love
that?
that. It's totally true.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And so your next book about like awakening your psychic abilities. So there's like a kind of like waking up, right? Which I
Yeah.
like. I mean, that's it's like it's dormant, right? We have it,
Mhm.
and some again for some it's more natural, but others it takes more work, but
Yeah.
it's there. So how do
Yes.
we awaken it? How do we wake it up?
There's a really great tip that I love to give, and that's to tell people to start what I call the psychic journal. Just get any old journal and write psychic journal on the top of it. Actually, I published one called the Psychic Awakening Journal.
Mhm.
If you don't want to do your own, I made one. And just start recording any dreams you remember. Any if you pull oracle cards, write them down in there. If you have hunches, nudges, if you see you seen signs and omens, like you're like, oh my god, the every time I look at the clock, it says 222 or 111. If you have like really strong like feelings when you meet somebody for the first time, or all these are very day-to-day psychic experiences and intuitive experiences that we all have, if you start writing them down and collecting them in a journal, I promise you're gonna be amazed how psychic you already are. A lot of times those experiences are very ephemeral. We like dreams. You have the dream, you're like, oh my god, that was the most profound dream I've ever had. And then if you get up and walk around 5 minutes later, you forgot it totally. And writing it in a journal is a way to kind of capture that. Plus, whatever we write in a journal, whatever we pay attention to, I used to say, if I write a book about psychic development, I'm going to call it Pay Attention. but but that's not what it's called. But that's part of it. And I think writing it in a journal helps us pay attention to
Mhm.
our intuitive senses.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I find there's interference of again things that we want to happen, our ego, if you like, or again where we don't want to see certain things. And whereas like
Yeah.
with intuition, it's fascinating because when you listen to it, it's always the best response. It's always the most correct response you can get in situations. And even though, I mean, from my own experience, even though it does not seem like it seems like the worst decision to make, but in the end, it turns out to be the best one.
Yeah.
But that's also so hard to connect with because we want to drive things in a certain direction, and then that kind of the control gets in the way of connecting with your gifts, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's such a beautiful way to say that. And I feel like our intuition is directly connected to our higher self, to our
Mm.
soul, right?
Yeah.
So our higher self is constantly speaking to us through our intuition. And, our ego self, the personal self, has a really different agenda for
Yeah.
us. Like our ego
Agenda is
self
the right
just,
word.
it just
Yeah.
wants a nice, comfy life,
Yeah.
like, let me stay in the comfort zone. I just want to stay at home and watch Netflix and, play with my cat.
No
And
fuss and drama, right? Yeah.
yeah, no fuss, no drama, nothing hard or scary. And your higher self doesn't care about that. Your higher self knows all the good stuff is waiting for you outside your comfort zone. So it's constantly there's this conflict that we all have inside of us of, you know, um certainty and staying in our comfort zone, plus the uncertainty that going with our intuition is always trying to move us into something new. And we don't like that. It might be like, oh, you've really got to leave that job that's killing you, or this
Mhm.
relationship isn't the right thing for you, or, mine was like, you got to quit eating sugar for like, it could be like really mundane. And it wasn't until I went to the doctor and got like, oh my God, you're pre-diabetic. You really have to stop eating sugar. And I was like, my God, they've been telling me that for a year. And I just didn't want, because the ego gets in the way. And I really think like if you want to live a more soulful life, then listen to your intuition. I feel like it's super important right now, Arash,
Yeah.
because we're the world is so strange. The world is so
Yeah.
chaotic and
Yeah.
turbulent that I think that the best way to get through that is to listen to our intuition.
Yeah. And I find when you talk about relationships too and friendships and so on, the connection we have with others. There are people I know for many years and I barely know them. And there are people I just meet and I feel like I know them for many years. So it's quite
Yeah.
fascinating in that sense when we are connecting with certain people and not so much with others. And it's not
It's
just
like
a
a
matter of
soulmate.
time, right? It's
That's the
just like,
soulmate you're talking
yeah,
about. Your
exactly.
intuition's telling you, like, and we don't just have one soulmate, we have a soul family, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's your intuition, that your inner self saying that this is a person you've maybe known in other lifetimes, or you have been here before. This is a really significant connection for you. So that's a great example. I love that example.
Mhm. So then we do have that sense, or that is the person, right? Or
Yeah.
the people that
Yes.
would be for us. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Fantastic. Great. That's a fantastic example. And I know that's something that we've all experienced, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think though, I mean, despite all the chaos and things that are happening, I think we are shifting in a different direction. And I think this is again as a world we're going
Yeah.
into that, and it's uncomfortable. And I think my own feelings of transformation too, where I liberated myself from a lot of like fear and anxiety and just bad thinking and feeling and so on, was through that. And we do have to walk through that tunnel. There's that phase where it's going to be extremely uncomfortable, but it's really worth it. It's really worth the journey to get there. And I think that's also happening, like not only individually but also collectively. It's going
Mhm.
on. And there are also times where you get it wrong, and then just kind of finding the path again to be on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as sort of like they talk about the ascension and the shift in
Mhm,
human consciousness as we raise our collective consciousness, sort of the old, and we raise our frequency and we are evolving as humans. Old world we created doesn't work for us anymore, you know?
mhm,
Like it's all broken. Nothing really works. It's all broken. Nobody's really happy with how things are. So there's this deconstruction process, this letting go of the old and to make way for something new. And I think as humans we just don't like that very much. It's very uncomfortable. You know,
mhm,
that part of us that likes the comfort zone, we all have to let go of that. And I also agree with you. I think we're getting an upgrade,
mhm.
and if you want to get an upgrade, you got to let go of the old, and that's just the way that is.
And change is so hard, but then
Yes.
sometimes it's like it hits you over the head. And I like
Yeah.
the card of the tower in tarot cards, where it's
That's
just
right.
like suddenly it gets to the point, and that's actually a wake up call. And I think that's happened various times where these wake up calls, I appreciate them, not in the moment, but looking back, I appreciate them
Right.
so
A really pivotal moment. I love this, in the Chinese character for danger, there's two in the kanji, there's two characters, danger and opportunity for crisis,
much.
right?
Oh, that's
So
cool.
crisis is danger and opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think it's time, for me, like what I do is I look for the opportunities because it just helps me sleep at night, honestly. Like I'm
Mhm,
gonna feel like there's always opportunity for growth, for learning, to be of service to humanity, to help other people, to let go of the parts that aren't serving us anymore. So I tend to lean more into the opportunity of it all.
mhm. And for spiritual growth, I mean, that's so
Yeah.
important too. But it's really important to really look at the feelings as well and listening to the body. And it's our focus is mostly the brain and thinking and just very limited. And whether it's from scientific perspective or even in our individual lives. And so, what would be a good way of trying to move in the other direction and become more an empath? Like, what can we do if it's not natural for certain people? What can they do to get there?
I think it's a lot about taking time to slow down and listen.
Mm, that's a good point.
That we live in such a busy, noisy world and we're, plugged into, phones and media and TV like a lot. And it's really hard to feel ourselves when we're in that state of constant stimulation. So I think one of the best things we can do is quiet ourselves. And maybe that's meditation. Maybe it's you take a walk, and you quiet walking, like you don't put your
Mhm.
your ear pods on, or,
Yeah, exactly.
like quiet living, like where can we sneak in these moments of quiet, and that allows us to encounter ourselves, to feel our body, to feel our emotions, to observe our thinking, to check in with ourselves spiritually. And it's kind of like that's the framework I use: the physical body, emotional body, mental body, spiritual body. That's how we work with Reiki and how we do energy work. And we just are, if we're so busy running all the time, we just become sort of numb, I think, to our own inner being. And spiritual development is always about going inward. The answer's inside, inside of us. And I think that's what we can do. That's this missing step for a lot of people.
Mhm, mhm. And I for myself, I used to take walks too, and it's mostly during the pandemic where I took them more seriously, and I took more walks. And
Mm,
I noticed that often, and just watching myself, is I'm worried about the past. I'm worried about this and this that I've done and things that happen.
yeah.
I'm also worried about the future, what will happen, but I
Mhm.
miss out on the present. And that's
That's
actually
right.
the main time. And then once I started focusing on the present, there's so many things that first I noticed. And then afterwards, I realized that many of my worries were actually in vain. They were not, they were trifles. And I was just getting like just emotional about them. And that perspective, that change of perspective was so important for me to
Yeah.
look at the bigger picture and put them in place, all these thoughts,
So
emotions.
beautifully said. So beautifully said. And that's the backbone of mindfulness, right? Is
Mhm,
teaching our mind to stay in the present moment,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Because everything else, it's like the haunted past and the scary future. you know, is that really what's happening? I mean, there are times when we have to do deep healing work, if we've had trauma and things that we have to go back and really excavate the past so we can heal. But I think a lot of it is training our mind to stay present. That's where our power is. That's where life is happening. And that's where it all gets good in the present.
Yeah. Yeah. And something that's been very important for me is authenticity and being authentic and responding to in an authentic way. But I think it's also like it's confusing because then you have all these different possible responses. What's the authentic way or what's the authentic self? And what would you say? How do we know which is the right self? Because people talk about giving your best version of yourself, but
Right.
I don't understand that.
I talk about it in my book, Awakening Your Psychic Ability,
Mm.
as the difference between reactive feelings and soul feelings.
Yeah.
So reactive feelings never feel good. It always feels bad. It's like anxiety or, fear, rage, anger, like reactive feelings, like somebody, cuts you off in traffic and then you fly into a rage, you want to kill them. That's not your authentic self. That's
Sure.
like a chemical cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol and
Mhm.
flooding through your body and your nervous system triggering fight or flight. So when we have, and I mean, that's quite a passionate feeling, but we know what happens if we act on that. It never goes well. That's bad for your karma. There's like a mess to clean up if we act on our reactive feelings. Our soul feelings they're sort of deeper and slower and more true to our authentic self. And even though they're not always like, quote, good feelings, I don't think there's any good feelings or bad feelings, but it might be grief or, you know, um, sadness or, that is a true feeling. I mean, if somebody dies, you're going to feel grief. That's a true feeling, like a soul feeling. And they always feel, I don't know, for me, Arash, they always feel sort of good, even when they're hard,
Mhm.
where the
Mhm.
reactive feelings always feel bad.
Mhm. Yes.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so I think that's it. It's when we have reactive feelings, it's sort of like a trauma that we need healing. There's some cleanup we need to do. From It's like an old wound arising that's calling for
Mhm.
healing. And so we do that healing work, we do that inner work, and then we go back into the state more of the soul feelings. That's the authentic self.
Mhm. Exactly. And I found like we're on the defensive, right? So when we're like that, we
Yeah.
react, and I think that's
Yeah.
definitely true. But once you get rid of it, once you deal with the trauma, and again from personal experience, then you don't react. You actually listen with curiosity. You listen to them
Yeah.
and what the person is saying, and you can agree or disagree with what they're saying, but it comes from a state of calm. And then so it gives you more time to process it. And sometimes you realize, wait a minute, the other person is right, or no, they are wrong, but that's okay, right? Without
Mm,
immediately like reacting in an aggressive way, for example.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, that it never stops. I mean, I don't think
Mm.
doesn't matter how much personal growth you've done,
Yeah.
or there's
Yeah.
always more to do. There's always another layer. And for me, it takes like
But
way,
it's like a video game. It's like you level up, you know?
you
It's
level
like
up.
it
That's
takes more
absolutely.
to get you on the defensive.
But the
Yeah.
things that get to you are harder. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like, if you think you're like all Buddhist, what do they say? Then go have some children. Like when
Yeah.
have kids, or, get like other people in life. Sometimes their contracts with us are to help us uncover those places where we're still reactive. So I think it's like when we're done, we fully learn that that's our enlightenment moment, where then we cycle off the
Exactly. Right.
planet, and
Yeah.
I'm not there, and that's okay. I'm still working on it.
No, no, no. We still got ways to go, and that's a good thing. I mean, that's the problem with perfectionism, where you want things to be perfect, but then once you got it perfect, what's next? I'm thinking, you know. So
Yeah.
we need that journey to continue, and what's the next level? I think that's how when we see we're growing, and I think spiritual growth is really that's the goal, not the
Yeah.
destination or enlightenment even. I think just don't think about it. You just focus on what you got, and maybe it'll come, maybe it won't, but don't worry about that. You know, that's another thing where I see people, it's like, I want to be enlightened. It's like, well, good for you, but live a life
Yeah.
in the meantime. Yeah.
Yeah. It happens to me too. A lot as a psychic, people come in and they say, tell me this is my last lifetime here. And I'm always like, oh, honey, it's not. I'm sorry. Like people who's actually it's their last time around, they're pretty happy. They're not asking that question. But I
Mhm.
think it's, hard to human. It's there's, there's a lot of pain and suffering and
Mm.
trauma that we all have to deal with, and it can feel really heavy. But to me, when that comes up, it's like the call to do healing work. There's
Mhm. Mhm.
sometimes I think as humans, we don't make the changes or attend to ourselves until it's like when our level of pain outweighs our fear of change that we actually get busy and do something about our inner state.
And how can we grow self-compassion? Because I see that's an issue with many people, where it's not
Yeah.
just self-care; it's actually like taking it further, really caring about yourself. And
Yeah.
it's not just going to the spa or taking time off. It's like really
Right.
like
It's
being
more than a bubble
compassionate.
bath.
More than a bubble bath. There you go. And it's we're often compassionate with our friends, but then
Mm,
with ourselves, it's just a different person. And it's like treat yourself like your friend. And how can we get deal with that criticism that we have, this
such a
lack of
great
self-compassion?
question. I love that. I love that. It's actually the topic of the book I'm writing now.
Okay,
And
cool.
that book is called it's called Sacred Reparenting, and it's about inner child work.
Yeah,
So I feel like that's inner child work, like learning to really love the child parts of us that got really wounded in childhood,
yeah.
and also at the same time learning to calm and quiet the voice of the inner critic. So the inner critic and the inner child, it's like a tennis match going on inside of
Mhm.
us all the time, usually in our subconscious, where
Mhm.
the inner critic's like, you're not good enough. And it's got this huge story about all the ways we're not good enough. And the inner child's like, I know, I just suck. I'm not terrible. you know? And that's we do that to ourselves. It's so sad. And so I think real self-compassion comes from noticing that pattern
Yeah,
and talking to the inner critic. I'm like, you can't talk to my friend Lisa that way. I say that to
exactly, exactly.
my own
Yes.
inner critic, and to kind of protect the child, like, it's okay, we've got this, we're good, and I've got you, like, all your feelings are okay. So that, to me, it was doing inner child work that actually where I really, 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 really figured out how to love myself. And I've been doing inner child work every day for the past like 25 years
Yes.
because it's
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's very liberating,
Yeah.
in many ways. And I'm thinking about like imposter syndrome too, where you're thinking you're an imposter, but I'm thinking an imposter probably doesn't have imposter syndrome and they need it, right?
That's totally true. I think imposter syndrome comes a lot from the inner child. I think it comes a
Yeah.
lot from people, like I see it when I teach Reiki and psychic development. And I think it comes from having like a lot of book knowledge, but not having a lot of experiential
I
practice.
like
Like
that.
if
Yeah.
you have imposter syndrome, you have to practice.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're studying Reiki, it's like after you've done your 100th Reiki session and the 100th person has come off your Reiki table and said they feel great, you're like, okay, I think I can do this.
Hmm.
Like I'm working on it's my sixth book. If you can believe that.
Hmm.
And I can't believe that. And I'm like, okay, actually, maybe I think I know how to do this. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think I know how to do this. So I think it's practice, practice, practice takes us out of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Very much looking forward to the next
Mm,
book too. So the ones I mentioned here, awakening your psychic ability. I really
mm,
like that, the awakening part. So it's like bringing it out and waking it
yeah,
up, right? And
yeah,
the art of psychic Reiki, and that's wonderful too. You're calling it an art form, which I find again that adds the creativity. It's like not just science or a formula. It's just it could be different ways. It could be like individualized, tailored, and so on.
yeah.
And I like that as well for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And it's such a fun, I have such a fun job, and really love to be of service to people, and I love helping other people learn. So one of the things I do is train other people to be professional psychic healers like I am. And that is such a beautiful process because to me it feels like how I can spread light through the world. I had a private practice for a long time, and I like, working one on one with people, but I eventually got to the point where I wanted to make a bigger impact in the world. And that's when I
Mhm.
started writing books and teaching, and to see that spread out and to train a healer in Reiki and then see all the people they impact, in the world is just such a beautiful thing for me. It's really what gets me out of bed in the morning and keep me going.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa Campion. You are a psychic counselor, Reiki master teacher, author of 6 books and more to come. Thank you so much for being on Rash's World. Such a pleasure
Uh,
talking to you.
Thank you so much.